guess I'll have to stop chewing my gum. Hello, this is the Henry George Daily Devotional, episode 19. We are starting chapter 4, The Maintenance of Laborers Not Drawn from Capital, which is something I thought that George had already established, but George thinks it's important that we establish it further. So let's go. I guess this is a subtitle of our chapter. But a stumbling block may yet remain or may recur in the mind of the reader. Okay, so he's worried about us hitting some stumbling blocks. Okay. As the plowman cannot eat the furrow, nor a partially completed steam engine aid in any way in producing the clothes the machinist wears, have I not, in the words of John Stuart Mill, quote, forgotten that the people of a country are maintained and have their wants supplied, not by the produce of present labor, but of past? End quote. Or, to use the language of a popular elementary work, that of Mrs. Fawcett, have I not, quote, forgotten that many months must elapse between the sowing of the seed and the time when the produce of that seed is converted into a loaf of bread, and that it is therefore evident that laborers cannot live upon that which their labor is assisting to produce, but are maintained by that wealth which their labor or the labor of others have previously produced, which wealth is capital, with a footnote. This is from Political Economies for Beginners by Millicent Garrett Fawcett, chapter 111, page 25. 111 chapters in 25 pages. I don't know, Millie. I feel like you ought to maybe have bigger chapters. We continue with George. The assumption made in these passages, the assumption that it is so self-evident that labor must be subsisted from capital, that the proposition has but to be stated to compel recognition, runs through the whole fabric of current political economy. And so confidently is it held that the maintenance of labor is drawn from capital, that the proposition that, quote, population regulates itself by the funds which are to employ it, and therefore always increase or diminishes with the increase or diminution of capital, end quote, with a footnote. This is from Ricardo, chapter 11, but the idea is common in standard works. Okay, we continue. This is regarded as equally axiomatic and in its turn made the basis of important reasoning. Yet being resolved, these propositions are seen to be not self-evident, but absurd, for they involve the idea that labor cannot be exerted until the products of labor are saved, thus putting the product before the producer. And being examined, they will be seen to derive their apparent plausibility from a confusion of thought. I have already pointed out the fallacy concealed by an erroneous definition which underlies the proposition that because food, raiment, and shelter are necessary to productive labor, therefore industry is limited by capital. To say that a man must have his breakfast before going to work is not to say that he cannot go to work unless a capitalist furnishes him with a breakfast, for his breakfast may, and in point of fact, in any country where there is not actual famine, will come not from wealth set apart for the assistance of production, but from wealth set apart for subsistence, and as has been previously shown, food, clothing, etc., in short, all articles of wealth, yes, it is Georgism time, are only capital so long as they remain in the possession of those who propose not to consume, but to exchange them for other commodities or for productive services, and cease to be capital when they pass into the possession of those who will consume them. For in that transaction they pass from the stock of wealth, held for the purpose of procuring other wealth, and pass into the stock of wealth, held for purposes of gratification, irrespective of whether their consumption will aid in the production of wealth or not. Unless this distinction is preserved, it is impossible to draw the line between the wealth that is capital and the wealth that is not capital. Even by remitting the distinction to the "mind of the possessor," as does John Stuart Mill, for men do not eat or abstain, wear clothes or go naked, as they propose to engage in productive labor or not. They eat because they are hungry, and they wear clothes because they would be uncomfortable without them. Take the food on the breakfast table of a laborer who will work, or not, that day as he gets the opportunity. Take the food on the breakfast table of a laborer who will work or not that day as he get how does this sentence work? Take the food on the breakfast table of a laborer who will work or not that day as he gets the opportunity. Okay, I don't understand that sentence. Take that food, man. If the distinction between capital and non-capital be the support of productive labor, is this food capital or not? Alright, I now see why he wrote that sentence, but I don't know if it's a complete sentence. That's just what we're going to look at now. Alright, okay. I'm rewriting this sentence. Consider the food on the breakfast table of a laborer who will work or not that day as he gets the opportunity. Okay, that's what we're going to consider. If the distinction between capital and non-capital be the support of productive labor, is this food capital or not? It is as impossible for the laborer himself as for any philosopher of the Ricardo Mill school to tell. Nor yet can it be told when it gets into his stomach, nor, supposing that he does not get work at first, but continues the search, can it be told until it has passed into the blood and tissues, yet the man will eat his breakfast all the same. I like that. Okay, so in my head that is the same as, a day laborer who's going to go out and try to get work. He's going to eat breakfast in the morning, whether or not he goes out, whether or not he actually finds work that day. And so, under these definitions of Ricardo and Mill, which is very common in the literature in general, you can't really know if that breakfast would be considered capital. But with George's definition, that capital is wealth set aside for the production of wealth, you would never classify that food as capital because it is going to the gratification of the desires of a person, of the owner, not for producing more wealth. I guess you could always argue the energizing your body, but that's the same problem. If you're just arguing that you're energizing your body so that you may produce more uh, capital, um, it's still very confusing because you may not produce more capital. So you can't. You got to draw the line somewhere, and that's where we're drawing it. You're gratifying a desire of the person. And again, the big reason, I mean, George states at the beginning of all this business of book one, or maybe not book one, but this whole like, let's define everything. He says he doesn't really care what the definitions are as long as we pick them and stick to them. And it's troubling if we stick to Ricardo or Mill's definition or the common definition of capital, because there's lots of contradictions in thought when we stick to those definitions. So he's gone for a very clear definition that capital is wealth set aside for the production of more capital, not for the gratification of a person's desires or the wealth holder's desires. Excuse me. All right, we continue with George. But though it would be logically sufficient, it is hardly safe to rest here and leave the argument to turn on the distinction between wealth and capital. Nor is it necessary. It seems to me that the proposition that present labor must be maintained by the produce of past labor will, upon analysis, prove to be true only in the sense that the afternoon's labor must be performed by the aid of the noonday meal, or that before you eat the hare he must be caught and cooked. And this manifestly is not the sense in which the proposition is used to support the important reasoning that is made to hinge upon it. That sense is that before a work which will not immediately result in wealth available for subsistence can be carried on, there must exist such a stock of subsistence as will support the laborers during the process. Let us see if this be true. The canoe which Robinson Crusoe made with such infinite toil and pains was a production in which his labor could not yield an immediate return. But was it necessary that before he commenced he should accumulate a stock of food sufficient to maintain him while he felled the tree, hewed out the canoe, and finally launched her into the sea? Not at all. It was necessary only that he should devote part of his time to the procurement of food while he was devoting part of his time to the building and launching of the canoe. Or supposing 100 men to be landed, without any stock of provisions, in a new country. Will it be necessary for them to accumulate a season's stock of provisions before they can begin to cultivate the soil? Not at all. It will be necessary only that fish, game, berries, etc., shall be so abundant that the labor of a part of the 100 may suffice to furnish daily enough of these for the maintenance of all, and that there shall be such a sense of mutual interest, or such a correlation of desires, as shall lead those who in the present get the food to divide, exchange, with those whose efforts are directed to future recompense. Teamwork makes the dream work. Okay, that's where we end this episode. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what your feelings are about Robinson Crusoe. We're ending this here. George says there's a stumbling block. Talks about Robinson Crusoe, or how a laborer can split time between food procurement and capital generation. Okay. We need to take our recording, HGDD, Book 1, Chapter 4, Episode 19. Start. We move it here. Convert. Add. Book 1. Yes. Browse. 19. Chapter 4. I added the letters EP. That's not right. Okay. We are signed in as Henry George. We will upload our video. The MP4. Thumbnail. Progress and Poverty. Daily Devotional. No. We need our tags. We are speaking the English language today. Cerritos. Oh, yeah. Sure. Next. 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 Public. Publish. Some people have been skipping and not liking. One 19. We've got a real tradition here. How we I wonder what I wish. Book 1, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Book 2, chapter 1, 2. Book 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Book 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Book 5, Book 6. Chapter 1. Yeah, these are the 6 in there. Book 7, chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Book 8. Book 9. Wait, no, chapter 4. Book 9, effects 9. Book 10. And we're not so in some sense, we're not even a tenth of the way there, huh? Yeah, it's slow going. Real slow. I don't know if these continue bits are... important. Okay. Gonna go brush my teeth and then probably start programming.